This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as the vice chair of the state Republican Party here in New York. And I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Welcome back, Jesse. Always a pleasure to be with you again.
It's great to be here.
So, I hear there's a trial going on in my old building at 100 Center Street, the state Supreme Court. And it's an interesting trial. It accuses Donald Trump of somehow having fraudulent business records. That's number one. And as a result of creating fraudulent business records, this was supposed to influence the campaign that he's running for the presidency of the United States. So let me give you my take on this case. This case brought by the District Attorney of New York County, Alvin Bragg, is a case that never should have been brought. It was rejected by the United States Department of Justice. It was rejected by the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District. It was rejected by the Federal Elections Commission for violations. It was rejected by the predecessor to Alvin Bragg, Cy Vance. It was even rejected by Bragg himself until he went back a second time, looked at it again. Now, why did he look at it again? Because some of the lawyers he had hired to do the original investigation wrote a book going after him, that is Bragg, saying that he didn't do the right thing by getting an indictment against Donald Trump. And so he was pressured by the political forces and the Manhattan progressive crowd to getting an indictment. Now, anybody who knows anything about the prosecutorial function, there's a lot of discretion that prosecutors have, whether to bring cases or not bring cases, whether it's a technical violation or a real violation, whether there's real harm. Is it worth the allocation of resources, that is, to protect the public safety and the public interest? So this is the story, Jesse, in my opinion. The case never been brought because there was no fraud here. It was a characterization of monies paid, so-called, for a non-disclosure agreement, which is perfectly kosher. And it was charged on the bookkeeping, not by Trump himself, but by bookkeepers, on advice of counsel, that these were for legal services. So that's how it was denominated, legal services. And so if you had that alone, and if that was the allegation, that would have been a misdemeanor, Jesse. Under state law, that's a 2-year statute of limitations. These events transpired back 2017. The statute long ago ran. So what Bragg did in a 34-count indictment is he boosted these things up to be a felony, which is a 5-year statute of limitations. And by doing that, he now has to prove not only that with the documents was a false entry, a false business record, but in addition, that the intent was to do another crime, and the allegation is that the other crime was to enhance his election possibilities in the presidential election of this year. So it gets indicted, and as the former Chief Judge of the state of New York used to say, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. Well, they indicted Trump on 34 counts. It sounds like a lot of counts, but fundamentally every time there's a bookkeeping entry, there's another count. It's the same transaction, occurrence, and events. There's a non-disclosure agreement about allegations of sexual misconduct. He didn't want to be embarrassed before his family and his wife. Went along with the non-disclosure agreement. Ultimately, at the end, it was all negotiated by Michael Cohen, by the way, his one-time lawyer. And Trump knew very little bit about this, if anything, until the very, very end. He didn't authorize any false records, and he went along with the non-disclosure. The money was fronted, by the way, by Cohen, not by Trump. It was paid back as legal services, and lawyers often front money in transactions for for their clients. So, goes before Judge Marchand. Judge Marchand should have recused himself. Why? Because Marchand's daughter is a political operative and a fundraiser for the Biden apparatus in the Democratic Party, and she brought in millions of dollars in fundraising off of this trial, and hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure, and plus she gets money out of it too. So on the actual conflict, there's a conflict because the statute's very clear. A daughter would be included if she gets a financial benefit. But even if you say there wasn't an actual conflict, Jesse, the appearance of impropriety is enormous. So if Marchand had been smart, what he would have done is he would have recused himself. He didn't do that. Next, you had a motion to change venue because people in Manhattan do not like Donald Trump. 85% of them voted against him in the last presidential election. So how do you get a fair jury pool? You didn't, and you can't. It should have been moved out of the city of New York entirely and moved somewhere upstate or out on Long Island. So that brings you up to date on that end. The trial goes on. You have a whole bunch of rulings by this judge allowing in stuff that's not relevant, prejudicial to the defendant, Donald Trump. He cuts the defense legs off by not allowing Trump to put an expert on campaign finance law. We were saying he couldn't offer an opinion, even though he's an expert and a former chairman of the FCC. That's Brad Smith. And so they decide not to put Smith on because he could offer nothing since he can't offer an opinion that this is perfectly kosher under federal election law. Oh, and by the way, I almost forgot to say, Jesse, guess what? The district attorney has no jurisdiction over federal election law violation. So other than that, it's been a perfect trial. The Donald, as they call him affectionately here in New York, amongst those of us who like him, the Donald did not choose to testify. Why? Because a good defense lawyer will never put somebody on when he is subject to the harangues of the prosecutor's cross-examination. It's unnecessary. Because remember this, Jesse, all the burdens on this case, burden of production, burden of persuasion, beyond a reasonable doubt, rests with the prosecution. So there, ladies and gentlemen, our beloved listeners, is a quick summary of where we are in the trial. Jesse, your turn.
Your Honor, you know I am hesitant to do this, but I do have to correct you.
Good.
There's a trial going on. I mean, there is something going on at your former courthouse. A trial, I wouldn't call it. A political sham, more like it. That's more of what's going on. I think you've identified a lot of the issues here. I mean, let's let our listeners remind our listeners. The FEC, the Biden Department of Justice, the Biden-led Southern District U.S. Attorney's Office, Bragg's own line attorneys, who then left and wrote this book. These are four groups that are not big fans of Donald J. Trump. Never have been, never will. And yet they all passed on this.
Well, no, not the guys who wrote the book. Not the guys who wrote the book.
Exactly, not the guys who wrote the book.
The guys who wrote the book were lobbying to get an indictment.
We're lobbying to get this done. I'm sorry, I apologize. But again, they all fall into one category, that they're not fans of Donald J. Trump. One group was fanning the flames for their partisan justice and to weaponize an arm of the prosecution, which is the Manhattan's DA's office. And of course, the other ones, they saw for what it was. It was not a criminal act. Now, many people have been saying that this is going to be terrible for Donald Trump. This is going to be disastrous for Donald Trump. Has it kept him off the campaign trail? It has. Has it also hurt him politically? I don't think it is, because right now, Donald Trump, at least twice a day, if not more times, at least 3 times a day, if not more times, has the bully pulpit for 5 to 10 minutes, meaning that every network, every cable station, every media outlet, anybody, a podcaster or anybody with a microphone that has access to the internet or airwaves is sitting out there waiting to hear from Donald Trump during breaks and at the conclusion of this trial. And he has been maximizing that. We've been seeing that by something we'll talk about later, about his polling in not only nationally, but in key states. This case is one that never should have been brought. As we record this today, the jury has been excused until Tuesday after Memorial Day, when I believe that the final summations will come forward. Right now, the lawyers are debating the rules,
the jury instructions
that will be presented to the jury. And I think you pointed out, if I was Donald J. Trump, after seeing what happened by his lawyers, the way they systematically took apart each and every witness, especially the convicted felon, his former lawyer, Cohen, the key witness in this case, I would never have taken a stand. I wouldn't need to take the stand. And if I thought maybe that I should take the stand, knowing the environment that I'm in, a hostile court, a hostile partisan court with a hostile partisan judge, the politics of Bragg and the politics of Biden's Department of Justice scheming their way into this case as one of the team members, I know I was never going to get a free.
Well, that's a good point.
An impartial trial.
What you just said is very, very important. Our listeners should understand this. The number 3 person in the United States Department of Justice, Colangelo, left that position to become an assistant district attorney in New York County. An important position in its own right, but it's not the number 3 person in the United States Department of Justice, Jesse. So he came down.
No, he's been one career.
That's not a career move. That's not a career move unless your agenda is to run a political contract. So you have a politicalized Justice Department. You have Colangelo coming down as a lead counsel and as a strategist. And he's the guy who's moving all the pieces and working together the strategy of the trial, as well as doing the opening statement, by the way. And guess what? This is all cleared by Garland, who's the Attorney General, and Garland, of course, is Biden's appointee. I mean, why is the third number ranked person in the United States Department of Justice coming down to New York County as an assistant DA to try this case, unless this was politically motivated, unless there was an agenda coming out of the White House?
That is why. This is not justice. This is not about fairness. This is not about transparency. This is not correcting a wrong. This is nothing than pure, hard-knuckle politics being implemented by the Biden administration and those people who want and are desperate to keep themselves in power at the federal level. But I will tell you, I think that we've seen that the legal team for Donald Trump has done a fantastic job at this. And dare I say, and I know we have friends on all these sides of this, if the legal team that Donald Trump has defending him today, if they had the same quality of people, defending the 2020 elections and defending possibly that there was or maybe or where there was breakdowns and fraud, I think that result would have been different. I think these two legal teams are much different than you see Donald Trump employing. But again, I think that Donald Trump, as a CEO of a company, he does not enter book ledgers. He does not handle every conversation. People like the president or CEO of this company, phones are handed to him to take phone calls because of the nature of what they're doing to grow their company.
Checks are pushed in front of you. Checks are pushed in front of you all day long if you're a chief executive officer.
Checks are put in front of you. Contracts are put in front of you all day long and such. You trust your lawyers in this case. And that's why this case should never have been done. This is why the Biden administration, National Democrats, Hochul's Democratic Party in the state of New York, and Bragg, who, by the way, who's got his own politics going on. He campaigned on going after Donald Trump, just like Letitia James, our very partisan attorney general in the state of New York. But Bragg has his eyes not set on continuing his legal career. He's got his eyes on the mayoral position. So he is trying to use this seat, like Letitia James did, to propel herself into prominence as the attorney general and maybe governor of the state of New York, or at least a candidate for governor in the state of New York. I think that Bragg is using the same playbook for his own political future. But I think it's going to blow up in his face because, as you said, it only takes one juror. Now, this is not a jury that are fans or maybe even voted or even care for or whatnot when it comes to Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump got 15% of the vote of Manhattan County when he ran for president. And that probably is a high watermark. But I think that the way his legal team has taken apart understands that Stormy Daniels was there just to poison the attitude of the jury, because what her contribution as testimony as a prosecutorial witness contributed nothing at all. Was it embarrassing? Yes.
It was meant to be embarrassing.
Effective?
The whole
It was meant to be.
the-
They were trying to poison the jury.
Right, of course.
Like this, to remind the jury that this is not the guy you like, right?
Yeah,
but when they closed with Cohen, that's what I believe, as a layman, that their case was unraveled, and their hope for a conviction. And as you said, it's 34 counts. Once you're not guilty or innocent on one, really you're innocent on all 34, because you're right, there are book entries and such. So I believe that the conviction they were going for, to help the Biden poll numbers and to help the Democratic poll numbers in the state of New York, so they can try and win back the House and put the Speaker's gavel back in Hakeem Jeffries' hands next January, is going to fail. It's going to blow up on their face, because I don't believe that even a jury that hates the man and has not voted for the man and doesn't subscribe to his politics can say, that he's guilty. They're going to say he's innocent.
Well, that's very well said, Jesse. I have to close out this segment, but I just want to offer this thought. And now I'm repeating what you always say, which is exactly correct. Of all the things to devote your resources to, if you're the chief prosecuting officer of New York County, that is Manhattan, with all the public safety issues that are going out there, with the climbing statistics of crime, people afraid to walk the streets and go on the subways, with burglaries and rapes and muggings and hate crimes going on, the riots that are going on led by outside agitators and naive and foolish kids on the college campuses. Of all the things that are going on in this town right now, the illegal migrants who are committing crimes, of all the things that are going on, this is what Bragg devotes his resources to? I mean, really? All about politics, Jesse, not about the law, not about fairness. This is a case that never should have seen the light of day. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us for more interesting conversation.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Out having fun, but the background noise makes hearing impossible? Your friend just cracked a joke, but you completely missed it.
And then, immediately ordered tacos.
Discover Nuance Audio, the new invisible hearing solution that's built into your glasses. Discreet, comfortable, and easy to use. Nuance Audio glasses help you hear better and reduce annoying background noise, so you can focus on the conversations that matter. Find a store near you at nuanceaudio.com.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Thank you for listening and staying with us. So, Jesse, I hear tell that there's going to be a presidential debate between President Trump and President Biden. And it's going to happen towards the end of June. Is that right, Jesse?
June 27th.
All right. Now, let me give you my thoughts about the presidential debate. First of all, as the usual course of these things, the debate times and the rules of the game, whether they stand, whether they sit, whether they have rebuttal time, whether they can go counterpoint against each other in a live mic, or just have to merely answer a question. All of those rules are done by the Presidential Commission, the Commission on Presidential Debates. Biden totally ignored that, jumped the gun, challenged Trump to 2 debates, and Trump went for it. Now, in my humble opinion, I wouldn't have done that if I were Trump. Debate, yes, but not let Biden establish the terms and conditions of the debate. Because the first debate is going to be broadcast on CNN, and you have 2 of the most partisan anti-Trump people in the world. No such thing as a moderate, temperate, centrist, nonpartisan moderator coming out of CNN. And you have 2 of the worst who've been bad-mouthing Trump for years. One is Bash, and the other is whatever his name is. You know who I mean. It'll come to us.
Tapper.
Yeah, Jake Tapper.
Excuse me.
Okay, so Jake Tapper and Bash, neither one of those people are fair, open-minded, centrist. So right away, you're giving an advantage to Biden with friendly moderators. Now, if I'm there and I'm carrying the water for Biden, as I'm sure they will, they'll keep going back to the January 6th allegations and the election denial allegations, rather than dealing with the real issues that face this country, which is, are we safer now today than we were before Biden took office? Is our border more secure? Is our national security interests across the world in better shape? Is our economy in better shape? Are we growing as a country? Are we a unified country? Are we, in terms of productivity and values and economy, or being divided apart? You have these speeches that are made by Biden before the NACP and before Morehouse College are racially divisive. It pits neighbor against neighbor. It's just racial mongering of the worst kind, totally divisive, from a guy who gave a State of the Union speech, Jesse, who pledged and committed that he was going to bring this country together. So again, if I were Trump, I would have done a better job of negotiating. I wouldn't have jumped so quickly. I would have wanted at least 3 debates, which is a traditional way of doing it. I would have wanted to have at least some impact, whether you stand, where you sit, whether you can go counterpoint, and go speak back at each other rather than just merely answer a question. I would have done that. And I certainly would not have allowed all the debates to be chosen on the networks and by Biden and his team with respect to who the moderators were. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are as follows. I think that this, and probably is going to be to date, the highest rated presidential debate ever witnessed. I think we're going to have more people watch this debate than they have in any of the other debates in the past. I think it will be overcome probably by the last debate before his November election. I agree with you. I think that, listen, Donald Trump has an image, a reputation, entire lifetime of experience where he does not back down from a fight. I actually thought he has been talking about debates since he became the presumptive nominee, I believe after Super Tuesday back in March. So I do remember that, candidly, in some comment, Biden said, I'll take, why don't we debate it? And from his 5-minute pedestal moment at New York in the courthouse, Donald Trump said, let's debate right now. Let's debate tonight. So I don't think he's going to shy away from the fight. However, you are right. The stakes are going to be high. For Joe Biden, he needs to reverse his poll data. The poll data that's coming out, and he is going to try and change the narrative that he's too old, not in charge, not with it, so is not completely lucid to become president for another 4 years, to justify literally being the oldest man to be president if he gets reelected again. Trump, at the very has a great opportunity here, and he has a narrative he can run. Number one, as you say, God, he's got to stake out the territory about asking and the theme of, are you better now than you were 4 years ago? When, you're better paying $4 per gallon now as you were 4 years ago when we were paying $1.50 per gallon, when there were no wars and our enemies were scared and respected the United States, and certainly the economy. The numbers are. Biden's White House is throwing out numbers of the economy is robust and moving forward. All you have to do is ask your neighbor on the street or a small business owner on Main Street. The economy has now bounced back, and in fact, inflation has killed it. And you can compare the inflation numbers.
What about Biden's lie? What about Biden's lie about inflation? He said he inherited 9% inflation. 9% inflation.
Of course, it's not. But I believe. Hear this, and I think that we have to. He's going to stake out that territory, and he also needs to be blunt, move forward with his straight talk type of approach. But he also needs to remind the viewers, the voters, of the policies that he enacted that made America strong economically, strong nationally, strong domestically, and had stronger borders and was respected abroad. If he can do that, he's going to be very successful, and those poll numbers are going to change. Right now, depending on who you speak to and what polling you see Trump is up 10 in the New York Times poll in Georgia, where this poll is where this debate is taking place, according, and he's up by like 3 to 5 points in Bloomberg's daily tracker. So it's going to be important. Georgia's a battleground state, but I really do think that Donald Trump has an opportunity here. He is walking into the lion's den knowingly, but he needs to balance his blunt, straight talk with the positive policies so they counteract and not let people remember or fall upon, or Biden's people fall upon, January 6th, or possibly what makes an unfavorable rating for the president.
Well, I think Donald Trump in his last campaign against Biden, his first debate, I think he did not handle well. He was too aggressive, and I think he hurt himself. He should have been more low-keyed, less aggressive. I think he would have been a more effective debater. I think even he realized that, because in the second debate he was much more temperate and much more effective. So the first debate, people pretty much universally believed, unless you're an absolute rabid partisan, that Trump lost, Biden won the first debate. On the second debate, I think it was pretty well recognized that Trump won that one. But I don't remember about the third debate, frankly, because at that time I was tired of listening to both of them, so I didn't. So let's get to something that you raised about the crucial states for victory in the Electoral College. Fundamentally, the Electoral College, remember, this is a system that we have under our Constitution where states have a number of electors based on population, and it's reflected in their representation in the United States House of Representatives. And you have to have, what's the number, 271 to be elected president. Isn't that the number, Jess? 271?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So what do you have? You have California, New York, no matter what you do, are going to be in the Biden Democratic camp. Now, they may get a little closer, but fundamentally, that's not how you win the presidency if you're a Republican. You have to win in other places. There are somewhere between 6, 7, or 8 swing states. Amongst them are Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Georgia. Have I left anyone out?
Michigan, Nevada.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's your group. So that's what you have to win, because that's where the real fight is, because everything else is going to be aligned already. I mean, there's no way North or South Dakota is going to be voting for Biden, and there's no way that some states will be voting for Trump. I mean, the one poll I saw has Trump ahead in 5 out of the 6 so-called swing states. The one where he's up up just marginally and flipped and flopped back and forth based on the polls. It was Wisconsin, and now the most recent polls is it was like 2 points ahead for Biden, and that's what we call in the business the margin of error, which is 3 points. So I think it's going to be a very interesting campaign, but that's where they have to focus their money, their attention, and their ground game on those states, because you cannot win unless you control those states. Trump has to win either Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. He absolutely positively has to win them unless he can substitute something else that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, because he needs that for Electoral College. So Trump could win the popular vote and still not win the presidency unless he gets one of those states because of the Electoral College, because you have so many votes in Electoral College out of California and New York. I mean, Illinois is another pretty much give-me state to the Democrats. The irony to me, I remember, as I always reveal to our listeners, I'm the House Democrat, but I'm also, as Cassimatidis calls me night after night on Cass and Cosme, I'm the common sense Democrat. I'm a common sense Democrat, and I just look at where the Democratic Party has gone, crazy left, progressive policies that are anti-democratic, a threat to our national security, borders that are open, a future that looks dismal, racial and identity politics division. I don't like it, what's happening. But yet I'm a realist, and I'm telling you that California and New York and Illinois are pretty much guaranteed to be in the pocket of Democrats. Why people will do that with the epidemic of lawlessness that goes on and the declining population and people fleeing and the bad economies there, why they would vote for Biden is totally beyond me, but you have to give them those states. So the crucial states are what we've identified, and they need to be fought very, very hard. So if I was running a campaign for either Biden or Trump, that's where I'd put all my efforts in those states. What say you?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it comes down to these states. And, I'm just going to share with our listeners a little bit of data. On the Bloomberg monthly tracking polls, Donald Trump got advantages over Biden in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, which flips back and forth here and there, Pennsylvania, which is key, and Wisconsin. And the two are tied in Nevada. Biden holds a marginal, small lead in Michigan. When you look at the New York Times, again, no friend to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is up 2 in Wisconsin, up 3 in Pennsylvania. Those are 2 states that he lost in 2020. Arizona, he's up 7. Michigan up 7 in this poll. Georgia up 10, 39-49. And Nevada, he's up 12. So we've got to see what that outlier is there between Nevada and the New York Times and the Bloomberg polling. But right now, it demonstrates that this trial, this sham political attempt to lock up your opponent because you're scared of his veracity at the ballot box by the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, has failed miserably, completely miserable. These are all pollings from late in April and in early May. So that's why we always say, and we put these two topics together with the debate and the polling numbers in these swing states. You got to remember, Donald Trump lost Georgia 4 years ago. If these poll numbers hold true, a wrong will have righted in the White House, and Donald Trump will be reelected. Now, again, this campaign is being run far better than it has been in the previous 2 campaigns. There is an administration basically in waiting in the America First Super PAC. A lot of the former staff members and other experts have been brought on board. They're professionalizing this operation. There is a complete synergy between the Republican National Committee and the Trump campaign. Fundraising is moving as it goes, even as this trial progresses. So I do think that they have to be wary of a conviction in this trial. I think that that's going to be one where when you do campaigns in those key states,
mm-hmm.
those swing states, that it's easier to say convicted than it is, appealing. But again, we talk about different things, about different lies, about this and that. I really do think that this campaign and this election is going to come down to the economy and crime. And when it comes to those two issues, Donald Trump has superior numbers amongst independents, his base, and even marginal Democrats. We've seen the erosion of the Biden base as of late amongst the young voters and non-white voters. He has tried to thread the needle on the Israeli-Hamas war to a point where he's angered groups on both sides, and he's not coming back from that. And what's scary, and you can tell by these poll numbers, that the policies of the state, the policies of the United States, domestically, internationally, and from a national security point of view, again, and our border, our open border in the South, are being driven by one state and one state only, and that is the state of Michigan. So really, this administration is simply representing and desperate for Michigan to stay in their column.
That's very well said. I just got a signal from the booth that we have to close out this segment. I just want to add this thought, and then we'll take a break and move on to other topics. But yesterday, our good mutual friend Eric Levine and I had a small luncheon with Congressman Mike Rogers, who's a former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, who served, a wonderful man, who served in the House for about 14 years, and he's running for the United States Senate in Michigan. And it's an open seat. And I have to tell you something. I sat there when we were having lunch, and I was talking to him, and I brought him across the street after the lunch, and we put him on the 3 o'clock show with John Catsimatidis and with Curtis Lewa and with Dominic Carter. He is such a wonderful man. He is such a grown-up. He knows foreign policy, he knows national security, he knows intelligence, he knows the problems that are out there threatening us externally from the axis of evil that you and I have talked about. He understands this, and I'm saying to myself, what a quality guy, and he believes that Michigan really is in play. And I said to him, well, what about the fact that United Auto Workers leadership has endorsed Biden? I said, how could they do that? The Biden administration is killing gas-powered cars, taking away freedom of choice, and killing their jobs. How could they do that? He said to me, he believes that the leadership may say one thing, but the voting by the members is going to be distinctly different, that there'll be Trump voters. So you may well be right. Michigan may fall into the hands of Trump. I hope it does. And I certainly hope that Congressman Mike Rogers is elected to the Senate, because we need grown-ups in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments for our final segment and more interesting conversation. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
5 immersive worlds, 1 amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe, now open at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Tell Me What Happened is a podcast series that shares dramatic stories of people helping people, and every one of them is true. These uplifting stories will fill you with hope. Listen today to Tell Me What Happened.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. This is a final segment of today's show. Jesse, at the break, we started talking and reflecting upon the character and the integrity, the intelligence, the experience of Mike Rogers, who's running for the United States Senate in Michigan. You want to share some thoughts with our listeners?
Sure. I remember former Congressman Rogers. He was a member and was elected in the 107th Congress. I was the chief of staff of a member from that Congress, Phil Scucci from New York's 1st Congressional District. And Mike was a leader amongst men, someone that was truly brought expertise, integrity, and intelligence to the House of Representatives, a body that doesn't always act that way. And let's just remember, I think the people of Michigan need to remember that this is a gentleman who served as the chair of the full committee of the Select Committee on Intelligence. Smart man, understands responsibility, and someone who the people of Michigan will be proud to have represented in the U.S. Senate.
I agree with that. I think he's just absolutely terrific. So let's shift our gears, Jesse. Let's talk about an update on the Israeli-Gaza war and what's the future for Gaza. Let me tell you, as I walked in the studio with you today, what I found very, very troubling. I pick up the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and I see that 3 countries, Ireland, Norway, Spain, have decided that they're going to recognize the Palestinian state. Now, let me give you my thoughts about this. Idiocy of the highest level. What you're doing is you're saying to terrorists, you're legitimizing the act of terror. You're minimizing the violence, the murder, the rape, the torture of some 1,200 people. You have hostages that were taken, and these are the people you want to give a state to? And who's going to run that state, Jesse? 85% of the Gazans think that Hamas is just swell. That's who they would vote for if an election was held today. So you're going to elect a terrorist group, which is on the international list of terrorist organizations, to govern a state, and you give them legitimacy and reward terrorism? I mean, it makes my eyes bleed, my head explode, Jesse. How insane is that? And all this does is it just furthers the isolation, the marginalization of the state of Israel, a democracy, an ally of America, an ally of the NATO countries that have to worry about imperialism and adventurism on the part of Putin and the Russian machine. It is so stupid. It emboldens Iran. So where are you going to get a check against Islamist fundamentalism, the hate that spews forth from Islamist fundamentalism, where they want world domination for their views, and they want to put the sword to anybody who disagrees with them? And it's not just Jews, Jesse. It's Christians, and it's fellow Muslims who are more moderate and sensible, who won't be co-opted by the extremists. And it's a fight between the Shias and the Sunnis. It is insane to think that you can turn over and give legitimacy under these circumstances. Who's going to govern them? And we're going to let Hamas do this? So you're going to give a base to Iran, which will totally destabilize the Middle East? And that means that Egypt and Jordan, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, other signatories, Saudi Arabia, other signatories to the Abraham's Accord. I mean, what are they thinking, Jesse?
I'm not sure what they're thinking, but I was shocked when I read this as well. And I agree with what the foreign minister of Israel did immediately. He recalled the ambassadors from Spain, Norway, and Ireland, stating that they're sending a clear message today. Israel will not hold back against those who undermine its sovereignty and endanger its security. Let's not forget that October 7th was the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. There were horrific sex crimes the world has yet to be seen. And the two-state solution that that is being talked about here. Who are you pointed out? Who's going to be in charge? Terrorists who are funded and are lapdogs to the regime of Iran, who has been creating this destabilization in that region. You know, when you pointed out those signers of the Abraham Accords, they are all privately and some publicly urging on Israel to finally wipe Iran off the map in terms of its influence of the Middle East. This is preposterous on my part, and it is not going to be and it is not going to be helpful. And let's remember, Eric Levine has pointed out a couple of times when he's been on his show with us, a two-state solution, a Palestine state, has been offered multiple times by Israel and the United States to bring some type of agreement to that region. Who was the entity that rejected them at all times? It was Hamas. It was the leaders of the Palestine movement. This is, I just don't get it here. And I really do believe that, you know, if you see the closest neighbors of Hamas urging on Israel, I do not understand how the governments of Spain, Norway, and Ireland, who are continents away, can send this message of recognizing a Palestine state that emboldens Iran-backed terrorist group.
You know, if everybody's so outraged by Israel fighting a defensive war, remember, this is a legitimate war. This is a just war. This is a war that was not started by Israelis. This is about a war for survival. They did all that torture and that beheadings and put infants in ovens and in microwaves and killed them that way. I mean, it's horrific. Where is the moral conscience of the government of Ireland, of Spain, of Norway? What is wrong with those people? And when I say they embolden terrorism, it's not just terrorism against Israel, but it's terrorism against those countries too in Europe. Because guess what? You've now said, be a terrorist, you will get a reward, whether it's in dollars, whether it's in political or diplomatic recognition. And why don't they seize a whole bunch of hostages in Ireland or Norway or Spain? Why don't the Basque separatists, who've always wanted to have their own country in Spain, why don't they go take 200, 300 hostages, start executing them and torturing them so they can get their own country? Why not? Why not divide up Ireland? Ireland has been fighting for years amongst itself between Northern Ireland and Ireland itself. Why don't you embolden each of them to go after the other one by kidnapping, torture, and depravity? I just don't understand that. I mean, Spain, Ireland, and Norway. Norway is supposed to be a common sense country. What are they thinking? I mean, are they totally out of their minds?
They're not thinking. They are out of their minds.
Yeah, and, well, listen, Europe is totally out of its mind because they're in a European Union that gives a free pass. Once you're in Europe, you can go between borders with no legitimacy. Just go back and forth, travel around. You've destabilized all of Europe, and you have an invasion by these hordes of people who have no commitment to the institutions, values, culture, or language of the country they're in. You've destabilized Europe. Europe will no longer be the bastion of Western civilization. It will be back amongst the Islamic feudal empires. It's absolutely ridiculous, Jesse. So
it is completely ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as the ICC, issuing an arrest warrant for Netanyahu.
Oh, excellent point. Excellent point. By the way, Israel is not a member of the ICC community, nor is the United States. And the fact is that this prosecutor is just a self-serving egomaniac. He announces this publicly. First of all, this has to be approved by 3 judges of the International Criminal Court. Okay? Guess what?
Exactly.
You should do that quietly and make the application for the arrest warrant. You don't do a public relations stunt. And even if this group does that, they have no jurisdiction. And the way that legislation crafting this International Criminal Court was, you can only use it where a country doesn't have its own lawful judicial system, and Israel certainly does. And they try to placate by saying, well, you've also named two of the leaders of Hamas, which goes back to something you and I and Eric and others have talked about, the moral equivalency between Hamas and Israel. One a terrorist organization, the other one is a legitimate democracy protecting itself against an existential threat with people committed to destroying them. I mean, are they kidding? So you throw out arrest warrants against Hamas leaders and you equate that with the government of Israel, the foreign minister and the prime minister. It just is insane, Jesse, just insane.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, sir. And you look at this and I can't help but think that these mixed messages that are coming from these three countries is a result of the mixed messages coming from the world's global superpower, the United States. Biden has bungled this effort, both, in every effort every issue there has been, whether it be Russia and Ukraine, where, a small incursion's okay, whether it's his tough talk or non-tough talk with China as it pertains to Taiwan. And now, of course, here in the Middle East, he comes out full-throated in terms of Israel, sees his poll numbers take a dip, and then all of a sudden he is now trying to walk the line of balance. There are American hostages still in the hands of Hamas. There are medics who helped those injured in the region in Gaza who are now seeking the assistance of the United States to get back home. Yet the United States says it will not give the Israelis its aid package for arms that was authorized by the House of Representatives and signed off on by the President Biden. And I champion and I am very grateful for the House of Representatives passing overwhelmingly a resolution under the Republican leadership of denying the ability of Biden to deny Israel those resources it needs to defend himself. Let's not all forget that 9/11, 23 years ago, God forbid if someone told the United States and President Bush how he should conduct himself to defend America after a terrorist attack on our cities that killed tens of thousands.
Well, by the way, Jesse, you raised a very interesting point. You talked about Ukraine. You know what the situation with Russia and Ukraine and Hamas and Israel have in common? Both times you start off with Biden saying the right thing about supporting Israel or supporting Ukraine, except when Biden said that ridiculous comment about a small incursion, which was a green light to Putin, because that was a signal, don't do anything. If Donald Trump had been the president, had done that, and you do that as a matter of national policy, say, well, a small incursion is not such a big deal, which is what Biden in essence said. Well, Trump does that. You say he's selling out to the Russians, it's Russian collusion, right? Biden does it. He's just guilty of being an old fool. And that's what happened. They went in. Now, so at the beginning, they say nice things about Ukraine. They say nice things about Israel. But as the thing goes on, they don't give them the material support, the military support, the weaponry, the arms to do what has to be done. They give missiles to Ukraine, but they say you can't shoot them into Russia. Well, maybe if you start taking out some of the military bases in Russia, you're taking out some of their oil facilities. If you take out some of their ports in Russian territory, maybe when their nose is bloodied and they're paying a price, maybe Russia wouldn't be so bold and would try to seek a negotiated settlement to get out of that. And maybe if you said to Hamas, give back the hostages now before we have any conversations at all about a ceasefire, because remember, Jesse, there was a ceasefire until those savages invaded Israel. So
Yes, there was. There was on October 6th, there was a ceasefire. October 7th, those savages invaded Israel.
All right, so let me ask you this. We have a couple minutes left, and I want to ask you this because I'm really concerned about this one, Jesse. Mm-hmm. The indoctrination of America's youth. I believe this to be a threat to America's future. You know, it's the old adage by Lenin and by Hitler. If you get the kids young enough, they become the future, and you get them on your team, and you inherit the future of that country. Well, These kids are naive. They're innocents. They don't know their history. They don't know politics. They don't know the economy. They don't know national security. They don't know their own interests. And I'm worried about the future of America because you have large numbers of these kids. They're rabid anti-Semitic. They have no moral compass. They equate the violence of terrorists with the self-defense of Israel. And they keep saying death to America as well as death to Israel. What do you say about this?
I'm truly despondent about this. We saw it play out on our college campuses a few years earlier. If there was one good thing for parents and the American people that came out of COVID, is that during those ill-advised lockdowns, parents finally saw the curtain was pulled back on what their children were being taught in high school and, of course, in college campuses. You know, what I do is I speak, we've seen all this. What we know is that there are policies and curriculums that are being taught in public schools and in colleges and universities that basically says to hate America, that the West is evil. They are gleefully try to encourage tearing down in any way the history of the United States. And, you know, you don't have to look forward. This is not a Republican just saying this. How about a former teacher who is also served as a former news producer and a podcast host for the Daily Signal, who wrote a commentary for the Daily Signal where he says just that. And he warns that conservatives must demand an end to the indoctrination of youth or face a new America public taught since childhood that the country shouldn't exist. That is preposterous. That's not the country we grew up in. That's not the country that my father or millions of mothers and fathers fled to seek asylum, to find liberty and freedom here. This is a shining beacon of liberty and freedom and opportunity. Yet we have bureaucrats who want to push that down. And I have to tell you, this is where you need a public-private partnership. And the way we do that, you need the public part is parents, is like-minded students, open-minded students that do not just regurgitate what they're being taught in schools and call out their teachers for what's wrong because they know their history, they're taught their history, they speak about it in their homes. And you also need elected officials and public servants. They're going to clean out this deep state, remove these bureaucrats so that we have the opportunity to put in those individuals that understand the importance of what education is: reading, writing, arithmetic, computer science, history, civics, going back to the basics to prepare this country for what she needs. And as we enter the third decade of the 21st century.
Jesse, that was very well said. I gave you the final word because I couldn't have said it more eloquently. That's a wonderful statement. Believe in America. It's the greatest hope for civilization and for world peace and quality of life for everyone and for freedom and opportunity. I thank you very much, Jesse. Another great show. Look forward to being with you again next week. On behalf of Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We want to thank you very much for being with us again on Let the Record Show. God bless you and God bless your families and America.
Let's all have a wonderful Memorial Day and remember our veterans who are passed.
Thank you, Jesse. Take care.
Let the Record Show is on the air.